Welcome to Cinema's Underbelly, the channel where we dive into the deepest, darkest trenches of the underground to analyze and review the most obscure, obscene, and controversial films that cinema has to offer. I am your host, Jonathan Doe, and today we will be reviewing the infamous Japanese Guinea Pig series. The Guinea Pig series is a collection of 6 controversial Japanese gore films that were released during the late 1980s and continued into the early 1990s. The first 2 films in the series, The Devil's Experiment and Flower of Flesh and Blood, would grow to become the most infamous films within the franchise, stemming from a multitude of varying factors that would ultimately give these films international attention. Released in 1985 and directed by Satoru Gore, The Devil's Experiment revolves around an abducted woman who is being held captive inside a warehouse by a group of men. We discover that the woman's abduction is for the purpose of using her as a human guinea pig to test the human body's threshold of pain. The film then documents as these men systematically expose their test subject to a series of pain-inducing trials, with each test increasing the level of pain inflicted, ultimately until she dies. Also released in 1985, Flower of Flesh and Blood is a pseudo-snuff film directed by Hideshi Hino. The film opens up with a block of text which explains that the origins of Flower of Flesh and Blood comes from a genuine 8mm snuff film that Hino received anonymously in the mail, and that the film we are about to see is a creative reinterpretation of what he saw within that footage. What follows is exactly what you'd think it would be. 42 minutes of a woman being tortured, mutilated, and dismembered, all with her killer giving special focus that she stays alive during the entire process. In 1986, the series would take a more comedic turn with its third entry, He Never Dies. Directed by Masayuki Kasumi, He Never Dies is a dark comedy about a man desperately determined to take his own life, only to discover that he has been cursed with immortality. And though this film takes a much more lighthearted tone, it too does not hold back on its graphic depictions of gore and the destruction of the human body. That same year, Hajime Tabe would release the 4th entry in the series, entitled Devil Doctor Woman. Following in the same vein as He Never Dies, Devil Doctor Woman also took a comedic approach to the series, with the film consisting of a collection of sketches hosted by a drag queen doctor, with each sketch detailing a different illness that her patients would come to her with, and each treatment always ending in a comedic and gory climax. The last 2 entries in the series, Kazuhito Kuramoto's Android of Notre Dame and Hideshi Hino's Mermaid in a Manhole, were a return to the series' original serious and dark themes, with Android of Notre Dame telling the story of a young scientist who uses human guinea pigs as test subjects in an effort for him to find a cure to a mysterious disease that is killing his sister. Flower of Flesh and Blood director Hideshi Hino releases the final entry in this series with his infamous Mermaid in a Manhole, a dark fairy tale revolving around an artist who returns to the location of an old childhood watering hole, only to discover that it is now a polluted sewer. Inside, he reunites with a mermaid he saw once as a child. She is now infected and dying from being trapped inside the sewage. He decides to take her home and mend her wounds, but the task grows to be more than he can handle, leading to a dark and bloody ending. Beyond the controversy the series held gained simply by the unsettling and challenging subject matter, the series gained international notoriety after a copy of Devil Doctor Woman was found inside the home of Japanese serial killer Tsutomu Miyazaki, a cannibal, necrophile, and child rapist who abducted and murdered 4 young girls between August of 1988 and June of 1989. The Japanese press inaccurately reported that the tape found in Miyazaki's home was Flower of Flesh and Blood, which led to the spreading of rumors that Miyazaki reenacted scenes from the film when torturing his victims. In 1991, the series received additional media attention when Chris Gore showed Charlie Sheen a mixtape containing scenes from Flower of Flesh and Blood. Sheen, mistaking the clips as genuine snuff footage, reported the tape to the MPAA, who transferred the claim to the FBI. FBI agent Dane Cutting informed Sheen that the FBI and Japanese authorities were already investigating the filmmakers, who ultimately were summoned to court to prove that the special effects in these films were indeed fake. After the controversy stemming from the Miyazaki murders, production on the Guinea Pig series came to an end. The series is now perceived as a source of great shame within its native country. And for many years, it looked as though the orphaned project was going to fall into obscurity and be forgotten forever. In 2005, Unearthed Films released this complete series box set, which is now long out of print. And unfortunately, the current rights holders to the series seem to have no interest in giving these films any future distribution. In 1990, a film was released that many confused as the seventh and final entry in the Guinea Pig series, known as Lucky Sky Diamond. The film centers on a woman who wakes up in a hospital and is terrorized by horrifying hallucinations as sadistic doctors try to harvest her blood to use as a recreational drug. Though it was later discovered that the film has no relationship with the infamous Guinea Pig series, enthusiasts often add this film to their collection as an unofficial entry in their collections. Though it is no longer accepted to make films under the Guinea Pig title in Japan, the legacy of the series has continued up into present day, with the development of the infamous Western counterpart, the American Guinea Pig series, a similar franchise that shares direct ties to the original films. Though no longer easily accessible, I highly recommend giving this series a watch. Though some of the practical gore effects don't quite hold up to the same way they did during the 1980s, it is easy to see why these films gained the notoriety that they did, as well as recognize the significant influence that these films had on extreme genre cinema. These films paved the way for a whole new type of filmmaking and content focus, and at the very least deserve respect for that. If you found this video interesting and would like to know more about the legacy of these films, keep an eye out for my next video where I review the latest installments in the American Guinea Pig series. As always, thank you for watching, and if you liked this video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Till next time, this is Cinema's Underbelly.